The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Kyle Hamilton, Ravens extension. It is officially official.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Well, let's dive into the big news. It is Kyle Hamilton, an extension that, just needed to happen. The Ravens needed to try to get into this mode of getting extensions signed. And that is what happened. We've seen them extend Rashad Bateman. We've seen them extend Derrick Henry. Ronnie Stanley obviously got his as well. So, at the end of the day, the Ravens get the job done. This is a 4-year, $100.4 million contract for Kyle Hamilton. $82 million of that is guaranteed. That just absolutely blows the safety market out of the water here. For context, Kirby Joseph of the Lions, he signed a couple of months ago, $85 million in total value with a $21.25 million average annual value. So Kyle Hamilton gets almost $4 million more per season than Kirby Joseph got. Plus, in terms of the guaranteed money, Kyle Hamilton, he got 82. The next closest to him is Antoine Winfield Jr. at $45 million. Almost $40 million more guaranteed for Kyle Hamilton, as opposed to what we saw from Antoine Winfield. So look, this is very well deserved for Kyle Hamilton. This is something that, you couldn't have let Kyle Hamilton walk out of the building, right? You just couldn't have let that happen. So I'm glad that they were able to get the job done. It is official now. Eric DeCosta has announced it. And I like the Ravens doing it this way, where they actually go and sign the whole situation with Kyle Hamilton is you get him signed and you don't wait, right? You don't wait. Hamilton, it's going to be a 2-year deal, or not a 2-year deal, 2-year extension on top of what Hamilton, obviously it was this year for Hamilton. He had his 5th-year option. So I believe you're adding 2 more years onto that, which would put him there till 2030, if I'm doing the math, or doing some quick math here live on Locked On Ravens. This is a defensive centerpiece. This is a guy that absolutely earned and deserved this deal and this contract. So, for the Ravens, it could have been a lot of different players, right? Lamar obviously still up for an extension. Tyler Linderbaum still up for an extension. Eric DeCosta said he likes to work in the dark on some of these moves. So obviously those are other deals the Ravens would like to get done next. But just getting Hamilton done, and at that price point, I know $100 million, $82 million guaranteed, like all that seems like a lot of money for Kyle Hamilton, which, yeah, it is. But with the way the salary cap works and goes up and gets maneuvered, at the end of the day, Baltimore is going to look back on this deal in 2 years, 3 years, and find it to be an absolute steal. We're doing it with Lamar Jackson right now, right? Lamar signed that deal, huge contract, highest paid quarterback in NFL history. And now 2 years later, after signing that deal, he's now the 10th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, right? So that's the big and important thing. The Ravens have a lot of time to kind of have this deal marinate and say, all right, we signed him to a big deal, get that money out of the way now. But the thing, and Jake Lisco of Locked On Bengals, I credit him every single time I say this, the Bengals are a team that saves $1 million today to only have to spend $5 million tomorrow. Well, the Ravens, they spent $1 million today to save $5 million tomorrow, especially with other safety contracts. And again, I don't know, because Hamilton has the versatility that he does. I don't know if other safeties will begin to ask for $100 million, $25 million per year. But what I do know is that guaranteed money portion of it, that is the bigger reset of the market to me, at least in terms of what other negotiations will probably look like over the course of, the next handful of seasons for that positional group. And it's honestly why the Ravens didn't extend Tyler Linderbaum, well, not extend, but then pick up his 5th-year option, because that would have extended that safety market and blown that out of the water by, $5 million. So you kind of have to pick and choose. Eric DeCosta essentially during his press conference saying that, we're probably not going to keep everybody. Now, he didn't say that word for word. He's obviously trying to get everybody. And we actually just got some breaking news on the waiver. So we'll get to that in a couple of minutes in terms of who was claimed and who was not. But, for me, there's just a lot to love here. I think it's honestly a really good deal. The longer you wait, the more you're going to have to pay the guy. So this is really big. This is really, really big. And for a guy like Kyle Hamilton, who can play every single position for you on defense, almost every, you're not going to line him up at nose tackle, but he can line up everywhere. He's a great blitzer off the edge. Obviously, the range is there. We saw that last season. Play up in the box. It's almost like its own position. It's like defensive weapon almost is what Kyle Hamilton's positional group is, or at least where he's classified as. He's not a traditional just single high safety or two high guy. Like he can go all over the place. So that market in particular, that's probably going to be a lot bigger of a deal. But yeah, this is a win for me. I give it an A grade for the Ravens. There's nothing not to like here. In my opinion, nothing not to like. So Baltimore right now, they still have a lot of room to go in terms of extensions. I actually put out the extension tracker that I have been working with. And you still have guys. We talked about Lamar Jackson and Tyler Linderbaum. You also have to figure out Zay Flowers down the line. Obviously, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are both up for extensions after this season, as is Travis Jones, as is Odafe Owe. Marlon Humphrey, obviously, his deal's coming to a close. If you want to go way far down the line, Roquan Smith is up for an extension. I think he's in 3 years, so you really don't have to be worrying about Roquan right now. But yeah, this to me it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The Ravens are willing to pay their guys, and this is how the Ravens like to do it anyway, right? They like their homegrown talent. They like to go out there, draft well, develop well, and then by the time they're ready for extensions, they're not going to like cheap them out of contracts or anything. But if Hamilton hit the open market in 2 years when his 5th-year option was done, he would have probably gotten like at that point 130, 125 million not per season. Wow, that'd be crazy. Per year, it'd only be about still 25, 30. But he'd be getting a heck of a lot more money. And especially, I think, I'm not saying he gave like a home down discount or anything. I'm not saying that. But for a lot of those top end players, rarely do they even hit free agency in the first place. Like you get it sometimes, but generally, when a team has a good player and you're a good team, you want to sign those guys to long-term deals. And the Ravens did that here today. Extension news. This was beautiful, honestly, to have happen right now. You wanted to get it done before the season. I'm not sure they get any other extensions. I mean, look, I'm hoping we can manifest that in the air if we want to. I'm trying to. But right now, the big thing for me is Hamilton is done. You have to worry about that. And outside of Lamar, that was the most important extension for me. So now hopefully attention does turn to Lamar. And, I'm seeing some of the comments. Edward, appreciate you checking in from the UK. Kyle Hamilton's the GOAT. Yeah, Hamilton. Yeah, and I see Boulder saying LJ next, hopefully before the season. I hope it's before the season. If it's not, I don't expect anything to happen in season for the Ravens with these extensions. I just don't. Lamar, last time the whole contract thing happened, made it pretty clear that he was not going to negotiate in season, which is fine. It's fine. It's not a huge deal. But so I'm expecting that to be kind of the same train of thought for him, for the Ravens and Lamar this time around. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what they can get going here. And I see Steve saying Hamilton will be a Raven for life. Hopefully this is true. Through 2030, at least that's, again, what my math is telling me right now. That's expected to be big, right? It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm pumped. I'm through the roof. If you're with us in the chat live or in the comments after the fact, put down how you're feeling. 1 to 10. How you feeling? 1 being not great, 10 being exceptionally great. I don't think we're going to be seeing a lot of 1s. I'm a 10. I'm an 11. Honestly, we're wearing the celebratory shirt here on the stream. We always got the palm trees going when something celebratory happens. I see Emil here in the chat. Very excited for our defense this year. And that's the thing too, being able to go out there and make something happen. And Cube, I was about to say, we're feeling a 1, but Cube corrected from a 1 to an 11. We got Mikey at an 100. I might have to one up you. I might have to go 101. I might have to just keep going and going and going, because that is where we are right now. But for the Ravens, Hamilton, not the only piece of news. It's a big one because of what Hamilton brings to the table. And of course, just to look up his stats very quickly here to get a baseline of what he's been able to do in the league so far. And I'll give you I'll give you a cheat sheet. He's been very, very good over the course of his 3 years, in the NFL. This is his 4th year coming up. 250 total tackles, 4 forced fumbles, 27 passes defensed, 5 interceptions. And again, he's been an all-pro, Pro Bowl, like the whole 9 yards there. Kyle Hamilton is here to stay.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
After like a week of negotiation and hope upon hopes, Adam Thielen has returned to the Vikings.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The big news, Adam Thielen is a Minnesota Viking once more. It sounds like it really was tough to pry him away from Carolina. When I first heard about this as an idea, I thought, nah, Carolina won't give him up. Or at least they won't do so, easily, right? You throw 2 first-round picks at him and it's different, right? But, they won't give him up for a compensation you'll feel good about. And I think we're kind of pushing that line. So let's start with the actual terms of the trade. The Vikings swap this draft, 2026, a 5th and a 7th. So they send a 5th, they get back a 7th. And then next year, they send a 4th and they get back a 5th. So I've seen a lot of people frame this trade as like the Vikings gave up a 4th and a 5th for Adam Thielen. It's patently untrue. They got back a 5th and a 7th as well. A 4-7 swap, you could call it, but that doesn't do the years right. It's a 5-7 swap and then a 4-5 swap the next season. How things go this year will also change that a lot. If the Vikings are good and the Panthers are bad, which if you go by the FanDuel odds, that's not a crazy outcome. Then, you might not even be moving down that many slots in the 2026 or in the 2027 draft when you do the 4th and 5th swap. If it's like that in 2026, right? That's not crazy. So I don't think like there's something to these day 3 swaps when it's 2 picks for 2 picks, that the value can only be so much in day 3. And if you look at the trade charts, if you punch this into all of the trade charts, there's a Hefe's Handiwork is the trade chart calculator that I often use when we talk about draft trades. All the different trade charts that have been concocted by everybody from Jimmy Johnson, who did the first one famously, to all the different like analytics organizations that have tried to quantify what it means to trade a 4th round pick for a 5th round pick. If you punch it into all of those, and depending on how you feel about where the Vikings and Panthers will land in those years and whether they're early or mid or late picks, the Vikings essentially paid a 5th round pick's worth of value. So that's, I think, the best way to frame it. It is a 5th round pick worth of value, give or take, depending on some assumptions you make and which trade chart you choose to use. And they just did it in this really weird piecemeal way, but it sounded like that's how it had to go. It sounded like the Panthers said 4th round pick. There were some reports that it was about like the money, and I'll get to the money. But the money worked out a lot easier than it sounds like the draft picks did. At least according to like Rappaport and Pelissero. So it sounded like the Panthers said 4th round pick. The Vikings did not have a 4th round pick. Their 4th round pick currently belongs to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they used it to obtain Cam Robinson. So they had to reach into another year to get a 4th round pick eventually. But in order to do that, in order to wait 2 years, the Panthers needed a little bit of extra value. That's basically what it sounded like there, where the Panthers said, okay, we'll take that, deferred 4th round pick, but you got to move one of our 5ths up to next year or up to this year. Right. And then as a sweetener, we get a 7th round pick in return. So that's, I think, more of the way the negotiation went down. As for the money, the Panthers don't take on any of the salary. However, as of this recording, the Vikings and Adam Thielen are in negotiations for Adam Thielen to take a reduced salary. He currently costs $7 million on the cap. He doesn't sound like he's going to be paid all of that $7 million. Yesterday, I addressed the notion, mostly this came from like Kevin Seifert's reporting, that the Vikings were potentially up against like a cash budget. There were 2 responses to that video, 2 different kinds of responses to that video. All of the comments fell into one of 2 categories. The first was people who did not watch the video and thought that I was complaining about the Vikings being out of cash, rather than disproving that and kind of showing that it is very much not true. And then people who were like, ha ha ha, who also didn't watch the video. So we can talk all we want about them. I know they're not watching because they don't watch the videos, but the people who were like, ha ha ha, Adam Thielen made you look so silly, when like it actually proves my point that the Vikings weren't really up to a cash budget. But I don't think it does a great job of proving my point, because that money would obviously have been earmarked, right? And so when they're making their roster cut down decisions, they have that money, they have the understanding that they're going to be paying this much to Adam Thielen, whatever that number ends up being. And then they're up against their budget after accounting for that, which is like how you should be doing your accounting. So I don't know if that necessarily disproves the cash budget thing, but it's still just doesn't hold any water on its own. So we don't need the Thielen thing to disprove it. So I don't know what money he is going to make. He did knock Tim Jones off the roster. The Vikings released their practice squad. I'll get into it in more detail, but Tim Jones was on that list and is now no longer listed on the Vikings website on the 53-man roster. And then I think Andrew Kramer just straight up confirmed it via his reporting that Tim Jones had been released and brought to the practice squad instead. So now Adam Thielen is here in Minnesota, ready to take over for the first little bit. But the question is, how good is Thielen at this stage in his career? He's turning 35 years old. And in a related question, was that compensation worth it? If we call it, they traded a 5th for Adam Thielen and then they paid him whatever they're going to pay him, is that compensation worth Adam Thielen? I find it really hard to argue no. I think it has to be a clear yes, because a 5th rounder in value, which is different from, a bunch of pick swaps that equate to a 5th rounder, but basically sliding back on day 3 a couple times. That's what they did. Sliding back on day 3 a couple times is almost certainly not going to do more for the Vikings than what 1 year of Adam Thielen can do for the Vikings at this stage in his career, unless Thielen is so giga turbo washed that he sucks and he can't contribute to the offense at all, and then it was a bad trade, and you're definitely taking that risk. They have a lot of data on how Thielen is aging. They can look at the last couple of years and see how Thielen played and probably be really satisfied with that. But you don't get any younger, so you have to assume that the next year you're going to look a little older than the year before, because that's how time works, unfortunately for all of us. And so you have to make that determination. But to me, thinking through what the compensation is, and Kwesi does these trades this way where it's like 3 picks for 3 picks and all this weird stuff, and you're pulling picks from 3 different years. And it makes it a little bit hard to parse out. And it's why you get weird stuff like, that he can trade a 4th for a 6th and a player, and then you'll hear that he traded a 4th for the player. Like, no, he traded a 4-6 swap for the player. That's an incredibly different thing. So I just don't think they paid that much for Adam Thielen, even after Carolina kind of dug their heels in and got what they wanted. Good for them. They got a 5th to turn into a 4 in 2027. But that's just not really considered to be that big of a deal when you have to wait for 2 years for it to happen. And then you just swap 1 round on day 3.
We got that 53-man roster for you, and Tim Patrick is not on.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
All right, everybody knows I love this man. Ross Tucker is with us. Ross Tucker Football Podcast, NFL on CBS, college football on CBS, Westwood One. Joins us right now, NFL analyst and, of course, former NFL offensive lineman here as we're getting ready for Lions season to begin. Ross, great to see you.
Great to see you as well, Matt. And I think everybody knows I love this show. I love Locked On Lions podcast. Love Lions fans. Thrilled for you guys. I was telling you before we started, Matt, how fired up I am about futurefans.com, just because I want all the Lions fans out there to have the experience they should have, which is having their children actually watch the games with them. I mean, I don't know, Matt, if you have kids or how old they are or whatever, but with my girls, like, it's been really hard to actually get them to sit down and watch the games with me. And I hear that from a lot of my friends, right? We're in our mid-40s. So a lot of my friends that have kids that are 5 or 8 or 10, they want to be on their iPad. They don't want to just watch the games and sit there and enjoy the games like we did with our dads. I mean, that was like, to me, Matt, every Sunday, it was church, then home, and watch the game with my dad in the basement. Like, that was what we did. But it's just not like that for kids. And by the way, the league knows this. The leagues, plural, Major League Baseball, NBA, they know that children are kind of consuming sporting events differently. They're worried about it. But thankfully, I found these guys at futurefans.com. You'll appreciate this. They're actually Bengals fans that a few years ago, they couldn't get their kids to watch the Bengals Super Bowl run, right? So, like, and their kids are like, I'll watch next year, Daddy. They're like, no. We're the Bengals. Like, we're going to the Super Bowl. You got to sit on the couch and watch. That doesn't work. Futurefans.com works. It's a storybook-led activity box that explains how football works. Right? So what are like 5-year-old kids or 7-year-old kids like? They like books. They like playing games. Well, they combine those two things so that now they understand football. They want to watch the game with you. So I think it's like $60. They have a discount code if you go to futurefans.com. You can act like you're giving your kid a gift, but let's be honest, you're really giving a gift to yourself of hopefully having your child have that shared experience for 3 hours every Sunday. And for the Lions, a lot of Monday nights, Sunday nights, etc. Hopefully for years to come.
Hold on a second, because you have middle school age daughters. I know they like Taylor Swift. You have a Taylor Swift connection, so that this all could come together right here. See?
You know what? And Alex Anzalone has that same Taylor Swift connection. So we're all from Wyomissing, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Let's put it this way. My daughters are way more interested in Taylor Swift than they are in the NFL or watching games on
or
TV.
Ross Tucker podcast.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully futurefans.com can help a little bit, but it's hard to beat Taylor Swift, that's for sure, especially with middle school girls.
All right, let's get to it. News of the day. Tim Patrick of the Lions has been traded to Jacksonville. Ross, the Lions are doing it. They are freeing up snaps for Isaac Tesla. What do you think?
I love it. I absolutely love it. First of all, to have a guy like Tim Patrick who bounced around the way he did, and the Lions sort of rehabbed him into getting a 6th-round pick, that's well done by Brad Holmes. That is well done. That guy was left for dead a couple times, Matt. So for them to kind of resuscitate him, revive him, I think speaks well. And they want to get Tesla on the field, right? I mean, they've seen what he can do. They obviously loved him. I think Brad Holmes, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the quote was he was my favorite receiver in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
And then based on how he looked in the preseason, and I'm going to talk about this on Thursday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast with Greg Cosell, because to be honest with you, Matt, I don't really remember even hearing that much or talking with Greg about Tesla before the draft.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. I'm not even sure exactly what Greg's eval was of him, but obviously the kid has been lights out so far, and he's more dynamic and explosive than Patrick is. The reality is, okay, you can find guys like Tim Patrick. You can find solid veteran receivers, reliable. Like, those guys are out there. Isaac Tesla looks like he's more than that, right? Like, Isaac Tesla looks like he's got more juice than that, more upside. You said it. The time is now. And then they end up having three really good young receivers if Tesla can be as advertised.
It also goes to show Brad Holmes is not messing around. He wants to put the elite players on the field. The Lions have that. You're in Philly. You cover the Eagles and did their preseason games. Do you see a collision course with these two clubs at the end of the year?
I did last year. And unfortunately, as you know, and I'm not trying to bring up a sore subject, but the Lions did not hold up their end of the bargain with that loss to the Commanders. Obviously, myriad of factors, the Lions' health on defense being a big part of that. I actually think there's a bunch of teams in the mix here, right? I think the Eagles are the favorites, and they should be. But I think the Lions will certainly be in the mix. I guess I'm higher on the Packers than other people. They've been really young. They've kind of been building towards this year. Jordan Love was a little bit up and down last year. They had some injury issues last year. But I think the Packers and the Lions are clearly the class of the NFC North. I do think Baker Mayfield always gives the Bucs a puncher's chance in the NFC South. And then the NFC West is interesting because the Rams with Stafford certainly have the firepower to be in the mix. And then I have a sneaky suspicion, I said this, Matt, on the Ross Tucker podcast, I'm expecting the Niners to bounce back in a major way. I think there's really only two ways they can go. They bounce back and become one of the elite teams in the NFC again, or the injury bug continues to hit them. They're old, they're washed up, they're over the hill. I don't believe that. I think, and maybe it's the last hurrah, but I think Trent Williams and Bosa and McCaffrey, I think the Niners come roaring back. I'm actually right now, you can listen to my preview show last week, but I think the Niners have a terrific chance to win the NFC.
You just mentioned, we're talking to Ross Tucker. You just mentioned Green Bay. Do you still like the Lions to win the division, or do you think Green Bay can do it?
I like Green Bay, and I like Green Bay because I have some concerns about the Lions from an injury standpoint again. The biggest one, obviously, being Frank Ragnow. That's a big loss, right?
Yeah.
And I know we're seeing and hearing good things about Tate Ratledge or Christian Mahogany, and Glasgow looks pretty good at center. He's not Frank Ragnow. Frank Ragnow is you can rarely say this about offensive linemen, but a difference-making player. Huge fan of him and his game. So that's a major loss. And then the coordinators, right? Like there's a lot to be determined. There's a reason why Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn were so sought after as potential head coach candidates. And I've seen this in Philly a couple times, Matt, where you lose both coordinators, and no matter how ready you think you are to replace those guys, the Eagles dropped off from 2022 to 2023. They had to upgrade both coordinator spots. They moved on from both coordinators after 2023. And in 2024, they were much better. They won the Super Bowl handily. Coordinators matter a lot, and I'll believe that the Lions don't have a drop-off there when I see it.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
A top 3 clash with national title implications. Texas versus Ohio State.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Texas fans are trying to reverse what happened 8 months ago at the Cotton Bowl in Arlington. I guess I should start by being nice and congratulating you and your team on a national championship. That's why that one hurt Texas fans so bad. I think most people kind of thought the winner of the Cotton Bowl was going to beat Notre Dame and win it all. Obviously, the Buckeyes made the big plays late and ended up winning the national championship. So a delayed congratulations to you and your squad for getting the job done.
Man, that was a fun game to watch, not only beating Texas in the Cotton Bowl, but also, well, I can't say fun the entire time because Notre Dame did come back, but the final outcome was pretty sweet to see Ryan Day and the players that have worked so hard just to get to that moment, be at the top of the mountaintop and celebrate. And seeing Ryan Day do the media circuit, going around the different national shows and seeing the players, how they celebrated, and then the national championship celebration. It was a great ending to a 4 or 5 year run for some of those guys that had some struggles along the way. The loss to Georgia a few years prior to that. And then, of course, the 2 losses a year ago, the biggest one being the loss to Michigan. Then they turn around after that loss and find a way to go on a phenomenal 4-game run in the CFP to win the national championship. That was a fun run to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's dive into this Saturday's game. And I want to start with the head coach, right? A lot of new on both sides in this matchup, but obviously the head coaching matchup remains the same. Ryan Day's been at Ohio State for 7 years, and he's only lost a total of 10 games. He's 70-10, and despite all the success, there were a number of Buckeye fans seemingly calling for Ryan Day's job after that Michigan loss right before the start of the college football playoff. Just curious where Buckeyes fans are at with him now. Like, did the national title calm everyone's nerves, or is there still maybe a portion of the fan base that isn't completely bought in on Ryan Day as the guy?
I think most people are bought in on Ryan Day to be the guy. The only issue people have with Ryan Day, and I am one of those people, it's the Michigan hang-up. It doesn't make any sense why Ryan Day and Ohio State have lost 4 games in a row. Even the worst Michigan team during that stretch was very, very physical and caused some issues for Ohio State, where they walked out of that game with a 13-10 win on the road for the Wolverines that day. So, I mean, that's probably the only hiccup. He's fixed some things with the defense, fixed some things with the offense to where both sides of the ball are some of the best in the country. And so he's done a lot of things well, got the national championship. People don't really complain that he hasn't won the conference since 2020. They just care about the 4-game losing streak to the biggest rival.
Yeah, makes sense. And last year's game against Michigan didn't make a lot of sense, but obviously Ohio State turned it on at the right time. And you said it, that 4-game run they went on in the playoff, incredibly impressive. So Ryan Day's the same, but new coordinators, right? Brian Hartline, who's been there, he's called plays there before. He takes over the offense for Chip Kelly. Matt Patricia comes in to take over the defense. I guess your thoughts on both of those guys and what changes, if any, Texas fans and Ohio State fans should expect from the new coordinators.
I think both fan bases should expect the defense to, I'm going to say, pick up where it left off last year, because that was a very special unit. But I don't think it's going to be a major drop-off with Matt Patricia coming in, replacing Jim Knowles. It may be more creative, and it may be the same 11 or 12, 13 guys playing consistently. But you're finding out that Patricia is going to use some 3-down fronts, some 4-down fronts. I don't think you're going to see the 5-man front like it was discussed last year before the season, but you're going to find Patricia be very, very creative with the formula and the base that Ryan Day has already had there with the defense. Offensively, it's tricky because while Hartline did call plays maybe for a half or a full game a couple of years ago, it's completely different when you're doing it not just against Texas, but against Grambling State and Ohio and Washington in the entire year. He does have the safety net of Ryan Day. So offensively, you have a new offensive coordinator, a new offensive play caller who's doing it for the first time at the full-time level for the first time. But then you also have a new starting quarterback. You have new running backs. You have new offensive line starters. You're also going to have some new guys on the outside and weapons. So I think the skill positions are going to be fine. But when you have a new offensive play caller and a redshirt freshman who's a starting quarterback, I think Ohio State fans are comfortable with Hartline, but there's a level of anxiety that's rising up, as it should be, because it's hard to know what this is going to be. Is it going to be Hartline picking it up and running like he knows what he's doing and not having any issues? Or is it Ryan Day trying to pick up the pieces after Hartline struggles to get into a flow?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel a little ridiculous asking this because we're talking about the first game of the year, but is there any sort of leash maybe on Brian Hartline? Like, if Ohio State's offense is really struggling in the first half, let's say Texas is up 10-3 or something at the break and Julian Sand looks bad and the run game's not going, is there a possibility that Ryan Day would consider taking over play calling that early?
Yeah, I don't think he'll have to wait till the first half for that to happen to go into the locker room and say, hey, you're not getting the job done. I would see it happening earlier than that, second quarter, midway through the second. If the offense is very, very clunky, I think you're going to find Ryan Day trying to give Hartline as much of a, have the leash be a little bit longer than some may think it should be. But Day has a final say-so. Ryan Day said earlier this week that he has a final say-so with the play calling, and there is a veto power that he has. But with him having the final say, he doesn't want to jump in right away and just take over first series and say, Hartline, you ain't got it. I know we got this script. We put it together. We're very organized in our preparation for this game. But, man, this ain't working, man. The script that we even put together, it's just not flowing correctly because Day wants Hartline to have the trust that he has done a pretty good job to earn over the past few years with Day. But I do believe Day having the final say and having the veto power is big and needed, not just in this game against Texas, but in the future too. I mean, Buckeye fans remember 2015 where there were two co-offensive coordinators and the offensive flow wasn't well. Urban Meyer at times in certain games would take over play calling, but there was some confusion. There was some infighting, and I believe that was a big reason why 2015 ended the way that it did. I'm not going to say Ohio State is going to have a year in this year like it did in 2015, but I do think Urban Meyer and Day kind of work with the play calling earlier, but Day and Hartline with their good connection is going to help the Buckeyes offense be good early in this game. I'm not saying it's going to be scoring 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first half. Don't get me wrong, but I do think they will find a way to get into a rhythm at some point in the first half.
Now, you brought up the coaches, and you also brought up Julian Sand a moment ago. I want to ask you about him, and then I'm going to ask you about Arch Manning in a moment, but we'll start with Ohio State's new quarterback, former number 1 QB in America, transferred in from Alabama after Nick Saban retired. Quarterback competition for a while. Last week, Ryan Day made the announcement that Sand was going to be the guy. How's Julian Sand been looking during camp, and what are some realistic expectations for him in his first career start?
He's looked pretty good for a guy who is in his second year in college. Him getting a full year with Ryan Day was very huge because let's say that he was at Alabama last year and then he decided to transfer after 1 full year in Tuscaloosa. I don't know if he wins the job, to be honest with you. I don't know if Ryan Day would hand the reins over to even a talented quarterback like that. Let's say he didn't play that much. I don't know if Ryan Day is like, yeah, you're ready. He is the more gifted passer, and he is the more talented quarterback. And so that's a big reason why Ryan Day won him out of high school and then was able to get him when he transferred after Nick Saban retired. I do think for Saturday, it's going to be interesting because everyone's talking about Arch Manning, and Julian Sand as well. I can't get over the talent that Texas has and what happened last year when these two teams played. And how with some different things going on with the Buckeyes offensive line that it might be that some guys up front for Texas find ways to create havoc and to penetrate the Buckeyes offensive line, which disrupts the rhythm and the flow for Sand on Saturday. And so I think for Sand, if the pocket is clean and he's able to orchestrate and move around and not have to worry about a blitzer or a DN coming at him, I think he'll be able to get into a flow. But I have my own worries about the Buckeyes offensive line, and a unit that is going to start the year stronger than normal. I do wonder if they'll be able to hold up the front four and the talent really in the front for Texas for the entire 4 quarters of the game.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
FSU game is upon us.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The injuries to Jaden Roberts and Jam Miller and maybe a little bit of James Smith being banged up, but he's fine. He's going to play. We didn't know about Tim Keenan at the time. And there are some people who have already said to me on Twitter, you're going overboard with this. I'm not going overboard. Let me tell you guys, I'm already saying Alabama 34-17, and I said 34-17 before Tim Keenan got hurt. I don't think he is going to be the difference in the game. That said, we took him to SEC Media Days. He must mean something.
Captain.
And he is a big cog in the Alabama defensive line wheel. So I hate the it's either completely black or completely white society we live in where you go, hey, he's not the end all be all. Right. Nobody ever said that. I'm not even sure he's all SEC this year. But I'll say this, that he was starting, and I don't care who it is. If we lose a starter, it is always at least a it might not be a I mean, if Ryan Williams were out, we'd all be going, but he's not. It's Tim Keenan. And so I go,
It's a big story because he's a starter and a captain and a senior and one of Alabama's very good players. And I think on the short list of players Alabama can't lose. And why? Because if you lose Ryan Williams, you're probably replacing him with like Rico Scott. You know, you'd be okay. But there's other players on the roster you lose, and it's sort of a tumble down to the next guy. And that's kind of the situation you have there. So it is a big story, no matter what anyone thinks. And now, an even bigger story to Tim Keenan, Luke, is just the fact that it's not Tim Keenan. It's Tim Keenan. It's Jaden Roberts. It's Jam Miller. Now you're out three guys that a few weeks ago you would have said would be starters against Florida State. Now you're down 3 of your 22. So it is significant. So significant that I think the line should move. And I don't normally say stuff like that. I think the line should move. But here's my thing. The line's 13.5. Because Alabama lost these 3 starters, I think the line should be now 12.5. And some people might think that that's not really moving. Well, it is moving the line. And I think that, to me, is representative of that there is a legitimate issue here. But like Luke was saying about how some people only see a black and white world, the way I look at it is, health-wise, people look at you like you're either perfectly healthy or you're on death's door and not somewhere in between. So that's how they see Tim Keenan. Some people are like, this is not a thing. And other people are like, oh my gosh, should we pull the plug? And it's really somewhere in the middle of this vast expanse, this vast gulf in the middle of being perfectly healthy and being, terminal with doctors agreeing, okay, it might be time. So now, will there be replacements for Tim Keenan? Yeah, and I'm excited. See, it's kind of this thing where I'm excited to see Jeremiah Beaman play a big role. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see Edric Hill play a big role. I'm excited for the debut of Kelby Collins, who I think we'll see out there some.
By the way, let me stop you there.
Sure.
That's the one guy that, like, if you had said 4 weeks ago, all right, Tim Keenan's out, what's gonna happen? I certainly would have brought up Jeremiah Beaman. I certainly would have brought up, hey, James Smith's going to have to pick up some slack. I would have said Kelby Collins. Yeah. And we have heard very little Kelby Collins talk at all out of this fall camp.
That's true. That's true. Not a lot of buzz there. Now, he's going to have an opportunity, though, for anybody. It's like if Kelby's, listening to the show and upset, hey, you're going to get an opportunity. And people will then forever judge you by what they see on the field. It doesn't – the fans don't see practice. I mean, the fans see what goes on Saturdays. So you're going to get an opportunity. And Jeremiah Beaman's getting this opportunity. And Edric Hill is. I'm excited to see it. But at the same time, I also recognize, are they as good as Tim Keenan? No, they're not. They're not Tim Keenan.
Because if they were,
they would be the
starting.
They would be the starter. See, the coaches' jobs depend on playing the best players because their jobs are literally on the line. We fans have an emotional investment. They have literal dollar investment. It's their jobs. And I mean, they have to sell their house and tell their kids that they have to move away from school and lose all their friends, and meanwhile, we're like, oh, well, we're excited about Beaman. And then when Beaman's no good, we're like, we'll just go fishing. but
Why-
it's kind of a
Why
bigger
didn't they
deal.
know about Beeman?
But I'm excited about the opportunity for Richard Young. I'm excited about the opportunity for Daniel Hill. Happy for Geno Vandermark. I mean, he's a fifth-year senior getting a chance. Who would have thought? I bet when he left Michigan State, there was probably doubts in the back of his head. I might not ever start a game at Alabama. Here he is, starting the opener. Excited for him. And inside, again, Beeman, Hill. I think we'll see some Kelby Collins. How about this name? I'm going to throw a name out there that might surprise some people. But speaking of buzz, two different people close to the program have said, watch for London Simmons. Watch for London Simmons. Two people have told me this now, separately. So that would be an interesting name. Now, he's obviously not going to be first out there. I think that's going to be Beeman. I think the starting defensive line, first snap, first of the game, LT Overton at Bandit, and James Smith and Jeremiah Beeman inside. That's what I think it's going to look like initially. And I'm excited about that group. And then I'm excited. The Bandits, LT Overton's backups are fantastic. I think Jordan Renaud's good enough to start right now. I think Keon Keeley is at least good enough to play on third downs. At least. You also got Fatu Toa Henry that no one talks about. No buzz there. Now he's sort of new to the team, missed the spring. He's at Bandit. That's an interesting look. Jamarian Latham, primarily at Wolf, but said in an interview just this week, as we suspected, well, I'm at Wolf, but sometimes I play Bandit, and sometimes they put me inside, actually on third and long, which, by the way, in terms of depth inside, let's not forget, on third downs, LT Overton and Jamarian Latham can play inside on third down. So Alabama's got options. They've got bodies. What they don't have is experienced guys coming off the bench. But then I ask, in today's college football world, who the heck has experienced depth on the bench inside? Who's got 4 and 5 defensive tackles who have played extensively? Who's got that? I know Ohio State doesn't. I know Georgia doesn't. I know those programs, well, they don't. And if they don't, then who does? Clemson, they brag about their defensive line, and it is great. But they're talking about Woods and Parker. They're not talking about their 4th and 5th tackle. I bet they don't have them either.
Well, yeah, that's true. And that's where, all right, if the pessimist would say we're missing Tim Keenan and we got a bunch of guys who've never played before or have not contributed to this point, or have underwhelmed to this point, even in the case of Keon Keeley. And then you could have the optimist say, what a golden opportunity for some of these highfalutin, high-star guys that we've recruited, and it's about time that they get an opportunity to shine. So I'm stuck in the middle. I don't want to be either one of those guys because I can see both of their points, and I want to just wait and see what's going to happen Saturday. If Keon Keeley makes a huge play, okay. I can get on that Keon Keeley train just like everybody else. But if Keon Keeley doesn't make a play and doesn't even play much, then I also understand that because he hadn't done it to this point. And while there was buzz this summer about him, I think it's until he does it, he ain't done it.
That's true. That's true. Until you make a play in the game, you're unproven, and he's unproven still at this juncture. But I do think that's coming. I'm waving the flag there. This dude's good. He's going to be good.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Well, we finally got some news about Dylan Edwards.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats.
Dylan Edwards ruled out right before we got on the show. We got some reports coming out from Pete Thamel, ESPN, Pete Nakos on 3, bunch of Pete's talking about some news on the internet, and that was about Dylan Edwards discussing being out for the game on Saturday. He's also doubtful for Army. Are you really surprised that we're getting this type of news from an FCS school heading into Manhattan on Saturday?
No, I'm not, because the Dylan Edwards injury must have been pretty bad for him to sit out the rest of that game against Iowa State on Saturday. K-State hasn't divulged much of what happened. Chris Kleiman gave a really brief update in his post-game press conference. It's important. I just tweeted this out this morning. It's important to remember K-State is not obligated to drop a availability report this week because it's not a conference game. So this will probably be the only real update we get on Dylan's status this week. And yeah, it's not too surprising. It is unfortunate though, because this was already a really thin backfield, in my opinion. Like, there were already questions if Dylan Edwards was this lead back, 3-down guy. I didn't think he was, but I thought that him and Joe Jackson would be able to play really well together. And now it's Joe's show. And if Joe Jackson doesn't come up big on Saturday and against Army, then shoot, who's it going to be? You know, you look at Antonio Martin, the transfer out of Sela. He could be somebody who steps up. J.B. Price, Levon Rice, 2 guys who are younger backs, unproven, but K-State believes in them enough to dress them and run them out there. So it's concerning. It's really concerning. This was, besides quarterback, probably the one position group where K-State couldn't afford an early injury, and now it happened.
Yeah, it seems like a huge hit. I mean, every player, every coach from the post-conference pressers in Dublin and on Monday's conversations when they returned to Manhattan, everybody on the offensive side at least said that the reason that offense struggled early in the first half is because they had so many design plays for Dylan Edwards, and ultimately that's why they struggled. Ultimately, that's why it was a 7-7 game for a very long time, and then they found a way to lose that football game, unfortunately. There was some calls towards the play calling decisions throughout the game that you can point fingers at. But again, not having Dylan Edwards makes that very difficult. Now you move into this game, of course, against an FCS opponent. And it's not in Dublin, Ireland. It's in Manhattan, Kansas against North Dakota. But you have a clear view of what this running back room will look like heading into that game, knowing that Dylan Edwards will not be participating. You're not getting a shock factor on your offense right from the get-go. Because Joe Jackson and Devin Rice were decent, but that ball did not move with the running game. Do you see that improving this week? Maybe because of the opponent, but also because of that, you know, the fact that you just have an idea of no Dylan Edwards in the lineup.
Yeah, and a little bit of both, but we have to remember Iowa State has a really good front seven. Dominique Orange is the best defensive tackle in the Big 12. So for K-State to have struggled on the ground after losing their lead back, you know, yeah, it's unfortunate that the game went that way, but it's not all that surprising. You know, that could have been expected by anyone who watched the game. As for this week, you hope the run game improves against an inferior opponent. I mean, this is North Dakota, not North Dakota State. Chris Kleiman has coached against this team this program a million times too. So K-State really needs to make a statement this week, and that begins on the ground. People are going to want to see Avery Johnson running the ball even more. And then, yeah, Joe Jackson and some of the younger backs getting involved. But the thing that concerns me about what you mentioned with the plays that were drawn up for Dylan Edwards is, you know, if one player is taking up that much of your playbook, then this isn't that deep of an offense, and this isn't that diverse of an offense. And if one player not named Avery Johnson was relied upon that much to where it threw a wrench in the whole playbook's plan for at least the first half, then that's pretty tough for me to wrap my head around. So maybe it'll be a little bit of a blessing in disguise with Edwards out, in the sense that the offense can find its identity away from having a fantastic lead back who does the dirty work on first and second down. So, but yeah, Edwards being out really stinks for this team, really stinks for that position group in particular. But I do think K-State is better equipped to deal with it on Saturday than they were last weekend.
That's a really good point too, saying that if you are utilizing or thinking that you're going to utilize Dylan Edwards so much, then you don't have a backup game plan That's a problem. I'm hoping that's a week 0 woe, Jason. I'm hope that's just the fact that they were so busy planning for 16 months. They continue to talk about how getting ready to Dublin, and hopefully that changes when they get back to this normal routine. And I'm hoping I'm not on the coaching staff, so I feel like I can overlook this. I'm hoping that they can take care of business very handedly against a first-year coach in Eric Schmidt in North Dakota, and then move forward Army and the rest of the Big 12 schedule on the way. Let's get the quick thought here on Avery Johnson. You talked about how you want to see him run the ball more. I couldn't agree more, but he was not very successful in running the ball against Iowa State. You mentioned Iowa State's defensive front. They had a great game on Saturday. Dominique Orange is insane. One of the coolest nicknames of college football too at Big Citrus. Gotta love that. But Avery Johnson, of course, didn't get some of those fourth down runs, those calls. He only rushed for 21 yards, had a great game through the air. Getting him more aggressive on the running side of things, especially with Dylan Edwards not being there, especially with that lack of explosiveness on the offense, that's got to be Matt Wells stepping up, making some aggressive decisions. How do we get the most out of Avery Johnson for the rest of the season? Because I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, and dare I say, a dark horse candidate for the Heisman. He made no turnovers. He's still in a good spot for that.
I agree. No, I think that talent-wise, Avery Johnson is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I don't think that's too bold of a statement. Where my concern is right now is, like, how much trust does this coaching staff deserve? Like, overall, I mean, that game on Saturday was one of the most poorly coached K-State football games that I have ever seen. Between the play calls, just in general, I mean, bland, and then in the second half, the creativity comes, but it was really too little too late. So you hope to see more of that creativity, but, like, do we really believe that we're going to see enough of it? You know, and as for the fourth down play calls, like, going for it on fourth down at your own 30 just sets up a defense that's played really, really well to fail. And, you know, it's not the offense's fault fully when the coaches are the ones putting them in that position, but it just kind of goes back to my point of, like, do we believe in Matt Wells to unlock Avery Johnson's full potential, or is it going to be one of those situations where Avery Johnson unlocks his own full potential from sort of these broken down plays where he's able to make something out of nothing, or plays where on his own volition he scrambles, where he's making that decision himself and it's not necessarily the play call? Because based on what we saw on Saturday, the play calling is not going to unlock the run game for Avery Johnson, at least not in a Big 12 game.
Yeah, I agree. If he's got to rely on broken plays, not only is he going to be nowhere near conversations for being one of the top players in college football, but that factor of how fans feel about where Kansas State sits and probably projected around 8-4 is probably the ceiling if that's what we have to rely on. And that is definitely something we don't want Kansas State to have.